So, guys, today we are going to be discussing the recently launched 2DG COVID drug by DRDO and whether it is really going to, be the COVID cure that everybody is claiming that it is. And Sugandha, I think you would agree that this particular drug has a lot of nationalistic sentiment associated to it, because I think it's the first drug which has been developed completely, nationally. If you take a look at all the other drugs, remdesivir or itolizumab, all of these are basically generic versions of foreign drugs. But this is the first drug that we can actually claim that, is something which is completely developed in India. So there are a lot of nationalistic, fervor associated to it. But we have to, I think, keep that on one side, and we have to discuss this very objectively today, whether this particular drug will really help cure COVID, as they claim. So, your stance particularly is that it's not the big, mega cure that it's being made out to be. And for me, I think I'm a bit more supportive in the fact that yes, it will kind of help. So maybe you can start, with a little bit of description of why you think that this particular drug is not the big cure.
Vishesh, okay, before I start, I think I would be made into quite a villain for, not getting into the nationalistic fervor idea of 2DG and going against it and saying it's not the panacea that it is being made out to be. Because, as you said, we need to view this objectively. And I have been reading a lot regarding the drug in the past 1 week. And the information is dicey, to be generously putting it like that. So the first thing that got me interested into this topic and what got me to study is the idea of what is a clinical trial. I'll start my my argument from that. So clinical trials, by definition, are what is conducted in different countries to see whether a drug is efficient enough and it abides by the safety protocols and that it can be used for human beings. Mm-hmm. Clinical trials are actually pretty long. So it doesn't happen in a day and a lot of factors come in. And clinical trials are not something new. It has been there in human civilization since ages ago, but it has developed as we go. And now that statistics has become a part of biology. And we have a whole different stream called biostatistics right now. So we have mathematical proof to, objectively judge the potency of a drug. And that's what I started reading about on 2DG. So the first thing that I would like to explain about clinical trials is that it goes through 4 stages, 4 phases per se. The first phase is called the phase 0, which is called pharmacodynamics or pharmacokinetics. This essentially means that you take a compound that has been already tested in vivo. And by in vivo, I mean in a biological organism. Right. In most cases, we use guinea pigs or mice, and that's how we have the in vivo experimentation.
I'll just interrupt in between a little bit. So just to confirm that this was done for, the DRDO drug, the first phase of trials that you were saying in May 2020 was conducted in the lab. Just as an intervene so that, our audience is confirmed with that. Sorry, you can continue with.
So, 2DG was done in the lab, that's right, but it was done in vitro. Right. And it was not tested in mice. It was done in vitro. So there's a huge difference between a biological environment being actually subjected to a drug and doing it on a petri dish. Because in a petri dish, first thing is that we control the ideal environments, humidity, and all the outer factors around it. So, specific temperatures or specific humidity, be it 40 to 30%. So we are seeing that in the viral cell, the glucose is being attacked and through the process of glycolysis, it's being destroyed. That's what it is essentially saying, but it's done in vitro. This has not been tested on the mice. This has not been tested for human beings as of yet, like in the in vivo stage.
Okay.
So that is phase 0, where you get a handful of test subjects and you do this.
Sugandha,
The next thing,
again, I'm really sorry. So I will have to keep on, I think, interrupting a little bit in between as and when more and more information comes up. So you have brought up a very good point about how the virus actually, how this drug actually attacks the virus. And I think we need to explain to the audience a little more as to how the whole process actually happens. So 2-DG per se is actually a mimic of the glucose molecule. And glucose molecule is very, very important for any virus in the body to replicate. In fact, virus cells in the body consume more and more glucose, because they require a lot more energy in order to replicate. Now, something like a 2-DG mimics that glucose. So hence the word D-glucose, right? So it mimics the glucose, it enters the virus cells, and then it inhibits the process of glycolysis. And the glycolysis process is basically something that breaks down glucose into energy. So once that process of glycolysis is broken, the virus is no longer able to, get the energy it needs to replicate, and hence the whole cycle breaks down. Sorry, so this was just, I felt that this was something, that our audience needs to understand and be aware of before we actually even enter the debate. Sorry, you can continue.
Yeah. No, I think, Vishesh, as we go through each of these points, it's very good that we have like an engagement through and through where, you explain it. So the next stage, this is phase 0. So phase 1 is the safety of that trial. It is done for around 20 to 80 people to see whether it's not having any kind of side effect. So at every layer of a phase in a clinical trial, you have to go through these safety protocols. The next stage is what we are mainly discussing about, which is phase 2. So this one has, a lot more number of patients, which is done on a test subjects of 50 to 300. And then we have phase 3, which is done on 1,000 to 3,000.
Right.
So and I will get into the details of how these phases are done, because that's the argument that I'll be placing. And the main idea is that when it is done to 50 to 300 people, it was only a total, as reported by the government, 110 patients who went through the phase 2 trials.
Phase 2 trials.
And for the phase 3 trials, where it was supposed to be typically 1,000 to 3,000, registered number of patients who went through it was 40, and the government release paper said it was 220 in 27 hospitals.
Right.
So that is the first thing, that there is not enough number of people on whom it is being tested on. So how can we call something a generalized panacea when your subject is already the numerical subject is already low?
Okay. So coming to this point of general panacea and it being tested only on 220 patients, right? Firstly, I think the claim is not that this is going to solve everything. It's very clearly mentioned by DCGI and by the institute, by DRDO, that this particular drug is only to be used as an emergency drug, firstly. And then secondly, it's only in adjunct therapy, which means that it's used as a complementary measure. It's not used by in itself to solve COVID. Okay. These are two very important points. But coming back to the point of 220 patients, right? If you actually look at all of the approved drugs by DCGI, you will actually understand that look at all of the drugs that are approved. Remdesivir is there. You have favipiravir. You have itolizumab. Let's just take these 3 examples, right? And I can tell you for sure that most of these, even if they were peer reviewed, they were not conducted on, the phase 3 trials were not conducted on 1,000 to 3,000 patients as you're claiming. In fact, itolizumab was only conducted on about 40 to 50 patients before it was approved in India. So my point is that why is something like 2-DG being, singled out and made to be something that is against scientific review or against scientific mindset, whereas the fact is that most of the other drugs are being approved so hastily, and that's because the situation calls for it. So there's nothing like, where 2-DG is the only player who is actually not following the complete scientific process to the dot. right? Any thoughts? Like,
For me, this is not just because, like, saying that, I'm specifically singling out 2DG. Anything that has not gone through a proper number of trials is something that I believe is not, you know, a foolproof thing. So
Mhm.
right now, according to the main, like the international body of the COVID scientists, there are only three methods. One is dexamethasone,
Yeah.
and the other is oxygen supplement. So
Mhm.
these are the actual internationally approved methods. Everything else is experimental. I'm not specifically saying that 2DG in specific is a problem, but
Mhm.
there is also considering anything. So, at the same point, so you can also bring like, doxycycline and azithromycin is also being given.
Right.
But so, so the fact is you're saying that, so this attacks viral cells. 2DG, so it's not doing something unique because azithromycin and doxycycline and all the other antibiotics that are being prescribed to COVID patients, that
Right.
are also, those are also attacking the same cells. So it is not,
Exactly. Right.
so in
Exactly my
that,
point. Yeah.
yeah. So these old medications, these
Mhm.
have actually gone through trials. So I have like the in vivo backups, the phase trials that have already gone through these antibiotics because they have been there for 50, 100 years. So
Right.
at
Right.
least, we are conversant about it. This is something completely new. And suddenly, we are already in a crisis.
Right.
So we are
So yeah.
literally jumping the gun here and probably
Let me
making people test subjects.
Right. Let me address that point, Sugandha, a little bit because it needs to be clear that 2DG is not something that is completely new. Actually, it might be a little newer in comparison to the other drugs, remdesivir or, for example, favipiravir. But let's just take an example of all of these drugs. Essentially, all of them are repurposed drugs. Okay, remdesivir is something that was used in hepatitis C. Favipiravir was an anti-flu drug. If you take a look at itolizumab, it was something that was used to solve influenza. So these are essentially drugs that are repurposed for COVID. All right. If you look at 2DG, it was used as an anti-cancer drug before. So claiming that any of the other drugs are something superior to 2DG is not accurate in and of itself. And now let's come to a little bit of the studies and all the trials that you're talking about, right? There's a lot of data. I agree. There's a lot of data about the other drugs. Like if you take a look at remdesivir and favipiravir particularly, there's a lot of data. But there's a lot of data on both the sides. So I'm sure that you have a lot of data supporting it. But then I'll give you some example of cases where remdesivir was actually not very effective in clinical trials. And there are proper peer-reviewed studies on this. So just as an example, I have a double-blind study which was placebo-controlled, and there's a proper published paper on this which says that remdesivir was not effective, or it was not statistically significant enough on COVID patients. There's a second study of remdesivir which was done by Gilead Sciences, which is ironically the institute that actually owns the rights to remdesivir. They themselves conducted a study in the initial phase, and they found that there was no particular statistical evidence of remdesivir actually solving COVID or helping COVID patients. Same is the case for favipiravir as well. I'm sure there are a lot of studies which support favipiravir, but then there are other studies. There are other proper peer-reviewed studies. Especially, I'll tell you by there's this scientist Daiki Samura from Jichi Medical University. So he did Avigan trials. Now, what is Avigan? Avigan is actually the master drug for favipiravir. Favipiravir is the name for the general purpose version used in India. Okay, so I'm going to call it Avigan trials. So Avigan trials were done by this person, and they again showed that no particular statistically significant data was found, right, for it to solve COVID. So my point is that yes, you're claiming that there are a lot of studies on these older drugs, and I agree that 2DG probably doesn't have those kinds of studies. But then there are those are studies which are found to be effective against their older, diseases. For example, hepatitis or, for example, influenza. but not against COVID. There aren't any studies which actually support the effectiveness of these drugs against COVID. So then my point is, why single out 2DG? If 2DG used to be an anti-cancer drug, and today if it's being claimed to be helpful against COVID, and so are the others, so why the differentiation?
Vishesh, I'm going to take one point at a time. First of all, so here is the thing. 2DG is an experimental anti-cancer drug. It was first done by AIIMS doctor, Dr. A.K. Banerjee and Vinay Jain. And they were the first who were experimenting in India regarding 2DG. And all of these trials were first sanctioned by the DCGI, but they were all done on an experimental basis. They were not mass produced and they were not commercially produced as anti-cancer drugs. Right. Moreover, there have been repeated studies in 2012, 2014 that showed that 2DG had side effects for heart patients where QT proglotin was increasing. And there was also these cases where it increases sugar levels. We as a country have the highest number of diabetics worldwide. Right. So, and we also have the mucormycosis epidemic that is rising. Diabetics are already at an extremely vulnerable stage. And definitely it has been shown that with comorbidity, you are more susceptible for a severe variety of COVID. Right. So you have diabetics in one hand who will have severe COVID and you are giving 2DG as an adjuvant treatment for them. But it is also shown for multiple cases that it is increasing the blood sugar level. So is it helping or is it causing further problems? Okay. Also.
Sorry, so I'll just counter that by saying, yes, you're claiming that there are studies that actually show that it increases sugar levels and it also, for example, impacts the heart a lot more. But then there are counter studies as well. Like there's Dr. Dinesh Singh in India who says that he did a proper peer-reviewed study where around 200 mg per kg of body weight was actually given as an antidote to a number of patients for 2DG, okay? And there were no side effects absolutely that were found. Now, the side effects that you are claiming, some peer-reviewed studies have claimed that those side effects start happening at around 65 to 70 mg per kg. But even if we consider that to be true, right, the current dosage of 2DG is 45 mg per kg. So we are not even reaching those levels where where these studies are claiming it to be something that affects the heart or that has side effects. We are not even reaching those levels yet. And this is apart from the fact that there are other studies which claim that even up to as higher dosage as 200 mg, it still does not have any side effects. So I don't see the problem. That's one point. And then there are other points as well, saying that, what about the other drugs? If you take a look at, for example, itolizumab, it has side effects as well, and for example, tocilizumab, it leads to reactivation of tuberculosis. So the other drugs that are being approved also have side effects. So, these are two very important points, I think, that should be addressed.
Yeah. Other drugs also have side effects, but do we have like a perfect note in the current case of COVID study, which can actually say what are the possible side effects for 2DG? I don't think so, because the problem is there are no published peer-reviewed journals, and you can say like, you can go into the internet and search for them, but the thing is they are all conflicting, and the difference between conflicting studies for published drugs is that these are published peer-reviewed journals. For 2DG, you don't even have the basic COVID published results for the phase 2 or the phase 3 trials. They are using the word significant, but they are not ensuring whether it's statistically significant, whether the p value is lesser than 0.045. So without that number, and it's not just me who can't access it, it's neuroscientists from Bangalore who are not being able to access it. So, and peer-reviewed journals are obviously given ID passwords to these specific people, so they can at least go through it and understand what is being done. So we just have basic information from the media about something, and this comes after, like, So it started from May 2020, and then
Uh,
what
just
about the, yeah,
sorry, just to interrupt, there are certain comments coming in. Maybe we can address them at the end. Sugandha, is that okay?
yeah, sure, why not?
No issues. Okay, all right. So, hi, Ravindra. Yes, Sugandha, you can continue. I'm so sorry. We have to, guys, this is one of our first live sessions, so you have to bear with us a little bit in terms of, handling the comments and doing the debate as well.
We
Right.
are all new here.
Yes. Sorry, Sugandha, you were saying, yeah.
Yeah. So, there is a huge difference between significant on symptoms and actually being statistically significant. Because the very fact is, since genetic engineering and genetic science became a very important part of pharmacology, the problem is there is a master protocol and there is a genetic reading on phase drives. Every human being has a different genetic composition. And even then, so what do the scientists do? They increase their pool of studies. They increase their number of studies to see whether, you can find a very unique kind of reaction to this. This wasn't done. And,
Right.
and even if it, and
But I'm interrupting you again, Sugandha, but the point comes again to the same thing, right? So is the thing for the other drugs as well. One point that I'm agreeing with you on is that there are no absolutely peer studies for 2DG. That I agree with you. But to say that, that one point of uniqueness is found for other drugs, that's not true. The other drugs are also repurposed in some way or the other. And there are clear studies claiming that they have side effects or they are not statistically significant. So I think the point is that most of these drugs are anyways being approved very fast, whether it's by US FDA or whether it's by DCGI in India. So, why not try? Why not? Okay, there might not be a lot of peer review or a lot of published literature on 2DG per se with COVID, but I think it's fine if DCGI has given the approval and if DRDO has come out with this drug. Why not, give it a shot as you're giving a chance to the other drugs as well?
The thing is, we are talking a lot on chances, and in the past, in the first wave as well as the second wave, it sounds a lot like masses are going to become guinea pigs. I'm not specifically singling out 2DG. I'm talking about all experimental drugs here. We are using one after the other, hoping that that this is going to work. And also another thing that comes, how many of these patients have informed consent that experimental drugs are being used on them? That is a very important thing for clinical trials or for experimental drugs. There is grounds for patient parties to sue government, to sue the doctors, to sue governments if there is not informed consent. For the 2DG drug, there were 40 recorded patients when it is saying that they have done it on 220 people. Have 220 patients given their informed consent? Do we have information about this? We don't.
But that's again an assumption by us, right? Yes, there are only 40 recorded patients, and they're claiming that they did it on 220 patients. But to assume that the patients were not informed or there was consent not taken is a presumption by us, don't you think?
I also think, when there is so much information which is at stake and so many question marks, there is bound to be presumptions at every point. Because you are saying that there is 220, there is recorded in the clinical trial registry. There are only 40 in the clinical trial registry. They are saying that it's 220. The information itself is dicey. So, of course, the question of presumption will come. But the problem is this is science. This is objective truth. The problem with science is that, it deals with numbers. It deals with the reality of things. And even your and my opinion will not count in front of these numbers. So that is the scary thing. Because who is going to take the blame if this malfunctions?
Right.
Have we enough information that this is not going to backfire on us? We can keep on trying. That is also good. But the thing is, how many times are we going to treat people as guinea pigs? Because from March 2020, there was a lot of talk about plasma treatment.
Right.
And now after 1.5 years, it's being removed. So it's failing.
Right.
We are all trying and we are failing. So, and more importantly, we had a gap of 6 months between from October to March to April end when the second wave started.
Mhm.
What was the research going on then? Where were the peer-reviewed journals? Where was this research? Because materials regarding
Come
all
on.
the all yeah.
No, the DRDO trial started in May 2020, right? So of course it takes almost a year to come up with the phase one, phase two, and phase three. So I think that claim is not correct. That
Phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 takes time. But as you do the phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3, you are supposed to put them in peer-reviewed journals. Where are those reports?
Mm-hmm.
Because
Okay.
you can go from phase 1 into phase 2 once it has been approved by the ethics committee. So where are those reviews?
Okay. I mean, I'm not sure whether peer reviewed publication is absolutely required after every phase, but I think that in terms of numbers, if you see, I do agree that not everything is published and not everything is like very straightforward. Uh, but I'm just saying that if like in comparison to the other drugs, it's something that we have come up with by ourselves, right? So I think we do deserve a chance, right? We do deserve. I think this particular drug by DRDO, how much ever you claim that, okay, there aren't enough studies, there aren't enough, published papers. I think it's the development of the drug takes a year, and I think it's completely okay if the DCGI has approved it. Of course, they've approved it with something in mind, right? Talking about the masses as being guinea pigs, I don't think that the DCGI would have done this if not for the right numbers and if not for the right figures by them. So let's just trust them also a little bit. As they are approving other drugs, they have got a hang of what to approve and what not to approve. They have not approved Patanjali's or whatever drug they came up with. So they're not approving everything. So let's just maybe trust them and try this out a little bit.
The thing is, Vishesh, there is a lot of trust value going on here when it comes to science, which is very difficult for cynical people like me. I don't believe in trust. I believe in numbers. And the thing is, DCGI, so I'm also questioning DCGI here. Because the DCGI is the governing body that governs, that goes through all these ethics committees to make sure that the drug is under ethical review with proper consent, with proper phases. So my question also rises, why did DCGI approve a 220 tested drug? Why would it happen like that? What was the emergency in May when in October when the first wave had already diminished? What was the hurry? Why couldn't it be tested properly? I am all about nationalistic fervor for a particular drug, but at the end of the day, when we are producing something from India, our integrity is also on the line. Our value, our worth in front of the international face is also on the line. That we are giving something that is worthwhile. What if it shows something horrible and that comes back to us? Like right now we have, like right now, we were in January, we were being called the nation that gives vaccine supply. And right now, Germany and Europe is questioning us that where are the vaccines? Because we have a shortage.
These are conversations that are always going to happen, Sugandha. Like we don't point out when remdesivir or plasma treatment fails in our country, right? So we don't say that, okay, we don't point out other countries and say that you have come up with this treatment. What is this kind of treatment? Bullshit treatment, this, that. I think we have to take those risks at some point, right? And DRDO is a very reputable organization. So I don't.
But we do point out there have been a lot of opinions about the Sinovac vaccine being useless because it was in China. There was a lot of racial bias against it. There was also question about Russia Sputnik vaccine coming in. Essentially, it was like they were saying that India is friends with Quad right now, so they have to appease Russia, and that's why they are taking the Sputnik. There is always going to be some level of politics and some level of criticism going on here. But here, my country's dignity is on the line. So I want to make sure that something that we are producing is something a bit foolproof, a bit more foolproof at least, not based on like a small number like this.
Okay. Awesome. I think let's probably end it here because we have had an enriching talk. I think based on facts and numbers, that's the most important, and we can disagree. Guys, whoever has joined in, we do respect your point of view as well, and all of the comments coming in. Basically, Aryavarta, saying that yes, it is something that should be given a shot. So I think to each his own. The most important thing for this conversation was to have a discussion based on facts and numbers, and not just spit out opinions which are not based on facts. I think we have kind of been successful in that. So guys, let us know if you enjoy these kinds of discussions more. We will get more of this kind of content to you guys. Thanks everyone who has joined in. Thank you, Sugandha, for the discussion.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thanks everyone. Thanks a lot. Good night.